Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome to the Shrewsbury Biscuit podcast. I'm Alex Whiteley, and we're bringing a great show for you today. We're speaking to Richard Smith from 30 Minutes of Good. Let's make it 30 or 40 minutes of good podcasting. How are you, Richard? You all right?
Morning. Yeah, great to hear you. And I'm looking forward to just telling your listeners a little bit about the project and hopefully getting some difficult questions from you as well.
Wow, I don't know about difficult. We like to make this easy for you guys. So I don't want to be like, oh, what are your political views on what's going on? None of that stuff. So, but what we'll do is, first of all, I want to find out a bit about you. This is what I like to do. Is I like to find out where do you start off in life? Where are you from originally?
Yeah, well, I started teaching maths in Much Wenlock. Some of you listeners might know Much Wenlock. And then after a few years of teaching maths, I thought, I'm going to do something different. So I started teaching computing. But in those days, it was called information technology. So I started doing that. And then about 8 years ago, it really took off because Michael Gove said that he felt that every student in the country, whether they're primary or secondary, should do computing. So the difference between computing and IT really is IT is more stuff like PowerPoint spreadsheets, whereas computing is actually writing computer code to build perhaps an online game or an app. So we've got students around the whole of the UK doing this type of work, and that's my main job.
You really can tell with especially with young people where they started off with the lessons with like computing and ICT, because I speak to so many young people and I'm like, I need a website for my thing, and they're like, I wrote my own, I designed my own, and I'm like, what? And that's because they've had that extra education. When I was a kid, we had one computer for the whole class, and you'd have to book a week ahead if you want to use it. It was crazy. But you say a few years, that's 37 years of teaching for you.
Yeah, I mean, what is really good is that lots of people become sort of disenchanted, really. But I think because I knew that was a career I wanted, and also the change of moving from maths to computing, and now also including e-safety in that as well, keeps it all fresh, really.
Yeah. I guess they go hand in hand, maths and computing, don't they?
Yeah. Well, yes, people say that to me, but then I think of all the stuff that's required in terms of creativity, in terms of graphics, or like your intro to the sound, the little sound bite for your podcast. So people have got different strengths and different frames of mind in terms of creativity. So therefore, I think the great thing about online digital work is it can relate to lots of people. So I try not to fall into that little phrase of maths and computing go together. However, you do find that a lot of coders in big companies tend to have done maths or perhaps music in terms of developing those logical processes.
Yeah, and it came into its own, didn't it, during lockdown or during the pandemic? Because I imagine there were a lot of coders, website developers, e-commerce sort of developers that were kind of rubbing their hands during the pandemic because everybody just went online, didn't they?
Yeah.
So you may have taught someone that's probably helped with this revolution of technology.
That would be lovely. I mean, there's a lad up the road that I've known since he was 5 years old, and I bumped into him, and he said, "Oh yeah, over the lockdown, I've learned a new computer language called Python." I said, "Oh, how did you do that?" And he said, "Yeah, I just learned it all online." So that's really interesting, and there are so many jobs in our country, well, and across the world, but we're short of people in this country to do things to do with technology. So, for example, you can imagine online security. So, if you want to develop your skills, you can do that. I'm just going to give out one website that I use with primary and secondary, and it's called W3 Schools, and it's an American site. and
Oh,
it's all free, and you can just go through a series of lessons and learn stuff such as Python, which I mentioned. But the children that I teach, even in primary school, we work with something called HTML, which is basically the language that's used to design websites. So we've got children as young as 6 who are editing text on screen to develop their own web page.
yeah. I was speaking to Andy McEwen a couple of weeks ago, and he was saying, "Oh yeah, I can type in like 16 different languages to design software," and I had no idea there were so many different like languages and things you can use to make software and to code. So that's really interesting to me, someone as an outsider, you know.
Yeah, I mean, what's interesting about Andy is he uses all those technological skills for the graphical side, as you
Yeah.
said, to do with projection. But all that has to be programmed, if you think of it. So there might be some sort of special special language that's needed for his section of technology. So, in terms of advice for your listeners, really, children that do computer science in secondary school tend to learn Python. And Python is a real growth area, so lots of companies will use Python as well. So it's quite a nice one to start with.
Oh, cool.
If you want to have a little look, go to a search engine and type 10 most useful computer languages for getting a job or something like that, and you'll get a list there. And then, obviously, if you want to get a job in that area, you need to learn the language, but then get some sort of certificate. So you will need to probably go through a company that provides proper certification that's recognized by an organization where you want a job. One of the lovely stories that I found was that I wanted some business cards, and I just typed in business cards for schools or something, and they I went on, designed the business card, and then I found it was like somebody just coincidentally in Shropshire who were in like a little industrial unit, and I didn't know where they were because their website was so brilliant, and there was no need for me to know where they were.
Where they
So,
were, yeah.
if you're sort of in a very rural area and you're worried about getting a job, just think of the Globe as a big place that you can search for jobs, search for training, and also link up with other people via social networking.
It's crazy to think about, isn't it? Because, you know, there's all these amazing stories of, you know, breaking out there and getting to London or to the big city lights, you know, and, you know, escaping Dodge, whatever they call it, getting out of Dodge. Well, you don't need to anymore, do you? The world's there for you to access via the computer. It's crazy. It really is brilliant. And it's really helped me and people like me that, you know, I have this local interest and in sort of, you know, telling people about what's going on in Shrewsbury, but we get listeners all around the world, and I don't have to travel far to get that out there. Do you know what I mean? It's crazy. So you taught for a very long time. Are you a retired teacher now? Is that it?
No, I'm glad to say I'm not. I'm having
Cool.
just one term off to do this new project that we're going to talk about, and then I'm going back in September. What's really nice is I've got lots of bookings for September, especially in the area of e-safety. Schools book me to go in and talk to parents or children or governors, and just tell them about some of the issues first of all, and then just some top tips on how to stay safe online.
Oh, okay. So what sort of dangers are you looking for then with e-safety?
In terms of young people, both primary and secondary, the biggest danger at the moment is they love to live stream. So you know they might put on a little costume and do a dance, but they might, for example, do that in their bedroom, and therefore some unsavory character will try and message them and say, "Oh, you look pretty," or "You look handsome," and by the way, your bedroom looks comfortable. And immediately, if they reply, they're into some conversation with a stranger who might be pretending to be, a 10-year-old or whatever, but it's actually an adult who's got, horrible things going on in their mind. And as soon as that young person starts to converse with that, say, adult, it becomes a little bit like some sort of addiction. So they get some praise from, say, the person doing the texting, doing the messaging, and then they'll respond, and then they'll get another message, and then sometimes it will go on over months. And groomers are known to work with 100 different students or young people and groom them over several months. So it's not just like over a day, and that's why it's very dangerous, because they get the child almost becomes dependent on that conversation, especially if they're teenagers and they're having issues with existing family relationships. They'll be looking to make new friends.
It is scary. As a father of, he's 6, my youngest, and TikTok is like this crazy thing now. He likes to look at the idea of TikTok. He's not on TikTok. He won't be on TikTok. And he sees what I do, the podcasting and the streaming and things like that, and he wants to be a bit like Daddy. And I have to be very careful with what I do, especially with when it comes to like wading into comment sections on Facebook and things with these arguments that are going on. I can't do that anymore because they see my name and they see me attached to the Shrewsbury Biscuit, and I know that there are dangers. People can attack me. But with a kid, obviously, you feel a bit more protective. Obviously, there's, like you just saying, there's some terrible things that can happen just with a conversation. I think it's very, very important that you're doing that. And so you're going around schools and talking about that with the kids or with the teachers to sort of pass on.
Yeah. So, for example, basically, a school will contact me. My main job is a website called AmazingICT.co.uk, www.amazingict.co.uk. So people go on there. I've been doing that for 10 years. So It's quite well known. And then people just contact me and say, we've been having an issue with a particular social network. Can you come in and talk to the children? Often year 5s or year 6s, and just tell them some stuff, some facts, and it's got to be. I found it can't just be frightening the kids through horror stories. It's got to be it's got to be some top tips really, and get them to talk more, either to each other or their parents. And some parents, they fall into the trap of saying, oh, I'm not very good on computers. I let my child do it all. Well, as soon as you do that, the child goes into all the settings and they can do anything. When I work with the parents, it's very much telling them that they are actually in control. They're the parent of the child. So it's like, you might not let your 6-year-old out after 9 o'clock at night in the dark. Well, you wouldn't let a child take a laptop into a bedroom and it be completely free to contact anybody in the world. It's just not sensible.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the biggest apps that my kid uses is YouTube, and you forget that there's a comment section on YouTube. There are ways for nasty people to get attacked. What would you say to? I was having a really interesting conversation just a couple of weeks ago. Actually, we were talking about Facebook and the correct age for a child or a youngster to have a Facebook account where they can speak to people. My response is 21 because I know how bad Facebook can be. What advice would you give to parents that are thinking about this?
The actual age is 13 for Facebook. A lot of the children actually think of Facebook as something for older people, so they tend to go on Instagram. So the nice thing about Instagram is there's lots of flexibility. It's very easy to upload pictures, videos, and it's very easy to like stuff and comment. So it's a very well designed interface, really. So in terms of, say, Instagram or Facebook, the parents have got to really say to the children, you've got to be aware of the settings. So, if you put a picture out to the public, that means anybody in the world, whereas you can send it just to your friends. So that's the first thing, is to look at settings. And then just to talk to them in it, I would say, a sort of non-threatening way, if you can, and say, well, actually, a bit like we've talked about this morning, there's lots of opportunities in terms of technology, but with opportunities comes dangers as well. So try and give that balanced view. But ultimately, the parents, as I say, they're in charge of their own family, of the children. So they perhaps need to get something where they are in control of, say, a time when the internet cuts out for certain age groups. And a lot of the internet service providers, ISPs, will now provide you with something. And you can get online stuff. So there's something called Google Families, Microsoft Families, where you can set it up. So if you've got children of different ages, you can set up different rights for the different ages.
Oh, okay, so you can have like an administrative account that controls everything else. That's quite cool.
Yeah, and that's really useful. Another thing, while we're on this topic, is you can get a phone which is called Monkey, and if you it's a Google Android phone for your child, and it means that as long as you don't give it them straight away, and you pair it to your own phone, you can actually see what they're doing on the phone. Because the trouble is, it used to be that we let secondary school kids have phones, whereas now, children as young as 5 and 6 want phones. So it's a way of giving them a phone, but being in control of what apps they download and who they contact. I'm just going to search and find how to spell that, because I know your listeners might be interested in that.
Yeah, there might be. While you're searching that, I mean, I want to procrastinate a little bit, because there are lots of ways that companies are trying to bring the younger generation into the modern way of thinking about technology. For example, there was a company out there that were trying to. They had a bank card, like a credit card type thing, that you put the pocket money on for kids, and you teach them how to use a bank card.
Yeah.
Things like this. I think that's fantastic. People were going, "Oh my God, you can't do that. These are children we're talking about." But when I was younger, we didn't have the ability to just swipe a bank card and pay for something. You'd have to go to the ATM, get the money out, and then go pay with cash. Or, they didn't have that. So I think these ideas of bringing kids into the modern world in a slow, methodical way is very important and interesting.
Yeah. So, that, as you say, that also gets over an issue that we're having a lot in schools, where the parents will let their child have access to their credit card, so they can buy additions for their online avatars, if you like.
Minecraft.
So what you just talked about there, Alex, is brilliant, because you're saying to the child, well, actually, I'll put £10 on that account. But if you spend £10 on your Minecraft avatar, you can't then spend £10 on another online game. Exactly. So that's really good. I found the phone now. It's MONQI.
Okay, MONQI.
And the way it's described here is the kid's smartphone featuring a browser that includes safe search and lets parents view a child's searches in real time, as well as what they download, and they're in control. So have a little look. And, it might be really interesting for... I'm just checking. I've got the spelling right, so that's fine.
I'm on the website now. It looks amazing.
Yeah. So that's going to really help your listeners, actually.
Okay. Well, I might get in touch with Monkey and have a word with him, see if they can send me out something to look at. You think
Yeah,
cool.
yeah, definitely. You could feature them. And what it says is a bit like you said with the credit card type thing. It says Monkey Mobile, starting children the right way. So it's almost like saying, yeah, you can have a phone, but there's got to be some rules to it because there's some dangers.
This is all very interesting stuff. We could do another podcast about this, Richard.
Yeah, I mean,
we could.
The thing about e-safety is it's changing all the time. Which you talk to me about why I'm still teaching after 37 years. I think it's when your career stays interesting, really. So I have to stay up to date, and therefore I'm stimulated. So therefore I want to carry on doing my work. Really,
it's really important, isn't it? Especially when you're teaching kids to be almost ahead of the game, because they'd be like, "Oh, kids, have you been enjoying playing Minecraft?" And like, "Oh, it's not about that. It's about Fortnite." "Oh, kids, you enjoying playing Fortnite? It's not about that anymore. We're playing this." And it's constantly moving. You gotta stay in touch with it all. But look, I mean, let's talk about your this new thing, 30 minutes of good that you've put together. Because it sounds very interesting. It sounds very positive for starters, and I think we need a bit of that in the world at the moment. So where did this come from, this idea?
Well, what happened was I was in Bridgnorth, and there was a homeless person sitting on the floor, and I normally might give him some money or some food, and I thought, I feel a bit powerless here because I don't know whether this person needs any money, because loads of people might have given them money. So I thought, well, what could I do that's just a bit different? So I walked along the street a bit, and then I thought I could contact the council and find out what facilities are available in Shropshire and Bridgnorth. And it was quite interesting because by the time I'd walked up and down a few times, rung Shropshire Council, and they'd given me Bridgnorth Council's number. It was exactly 30 minutes, and I felt I'd actually achieved something, because they said they were going to send a housing officer out. During the pandemic, apparently, it's compulsory now for local authorities, if they get a report of somebody that's homeless, for them to send somebody out to talk to them to find out, what the situation is with them. So that was exactly what I wanted. And they kindly rang me back, actually, afterwards and said, this person, has been seen several times, and we're going to put them in a hostel for a couple of days. So that was positive. So it gave me, it's like any idea, you need some sort of stimulus to get you going. So the next thing I did was just wrote a few notes, and then I put something on Facebook talking about social media, saying, I got this idea, can anybody design a logo for me? And funnily enough, a friend that I went to college with 40 years ago, who now lives in South Africa, said, oh yeah, I'm a graphic designer, I'll do it for you. So that's where the logos come from, and loads of people love the logo. So I'll just give out the domain name now, and then people can type it in. So it's www.30, the number 30, and then mins, M-I-N-S, of good, all one phrase.com. So you can see the logo. And it's got a little clock on it. It's got the word 30 and then of good. So within a logo, it almost says what the website's about. And that's going to be useful for your listeners if they want to design their own logo. It's no use having a couple of letters, so my name's Richard Smith. It's no use saying RS in wonderful graphic design if it doesn't tell you what the website's about. So that was a really interesting section of the work. And then I can design websites myself, but I decided that I was going to get somebody else to do it because I was too busy in my schools. So I got somebody in Newport to do it called Neil Cole, and he's done a tremendous job. And he's done it on WordPress. So a little bit more technology here. WordPress is the most popular site to build websites on. And you can create your own free WordPress website. You mentioned students you talk to, but you get adverts popping up, I decided to pay Neil to build this for me. So he's got a paid WordPress account.
I see.
But that's interesting. If people want to have a go at WordPress, it's all free,
Yeah,
and you can create an account and you can build your own website. So anyway, the next stage was actually just thinking, well, what ideas might I like? So I'll just give you a couple so that your listeners can just get an idea of what it's about. So there's one about animal rescue. So just thinking about lockdown, and a lot of people have been really focusing on their local community a bit more, and that's been very positive. So there might be people there who have been listening to birds, or spotted, a badger or a fox who hadn't done that before, or seen a hedgehog. So that section is talking about the fact that if you got half an hour to spare, why don't you just search for animal rescue places in your area? And there's loads in Shropshire. It's interesting because in South Shropshire, we've got the UK Centre for Hedgehogs. It's called the British Hedgehog Preservation Society near Ludlow. So that was really interesting that, we've got this big county, and within that county, there's loads of stuff that we don't actually know. So anyway, so you could search for that, and then you could find out how you could help them. So it might be doing some fundraising in half an hour, just asking a few friends to donate something, or just using social media to tell people about the plight of animals and why it's important that we all try and help animals in our community.
So these are so the way that the website is designed, for the listeners that haven't gone up there and looked. By the way, first go and have a look. They're like challenges. They're like, well, yeah. I challenge you to go and spend half an hour doing this, and you might do some good.
Exactly, that's brilliant. You're the first person that's expressed it as succinctly as that. Yeah, and what's interesting about that is that I found in my job that a lot of people have got good intentions. They want to be positive. They want to do good. But often, because their lives are so busy, or there's other stuff going on, or they might be worried about stuff, that they don't actually do much. So as you say, if we can express it that it's a 30-minute challenge, then everybody's got 30 minutes to spare. So that's, thank you for that, Alex. I'm going to use that if I may, and I will
please do.
Put your name next to it. So yeah. So let me give you another one. This is called musical musing. During lockdown, I've noticed that lots of people have been talking about music, and this provides them with some links to spend half an hour just getting into music. So this one isn't so much about helping other people, it's about helping themselves. And then the idea would be, if they liked a particular website or a particular product on there, then they can tell other people. So all the stuff on there is free, and then they might even get into doing a bit of live music, because I notice in Shrewsbury you've got a rock school which looks brilliant for, I think it's 11 to 18-year-olds. So, but the thing about music is, it's quite complicated, and you might have been put off music at school like I was. So it might be quite nice just to have a little go at, an online synthesizer on your computer or on your tablet or on your phone, and that'll get you into understanding about music. And I've used the websites on there with 4-year-olds, so there's some stuff on there that's suitable for very, very young children.
I like the idea of using music as a little 30-minute project just to get started, because it's like throwing a pebble down a mountain, isn't it? It starts off with this 30-minute thing. Oh, I like the idea of that, and it builds up and builds up. Next thing you know, you've got an avalanche. And I have this similar idea for a community podcast project, where it's a very similar way of like the School of Rock with Jack Black. I love that film. It's one of my favorite things
Yeah,
ever because you have the core musicians of the band, but you also have the lighting expert and the guy that does the fashion and the guy that does the security, and everyone gets involved. Everyone gets a shot at this. And so like this idea of a community podcast project is we have our hosts, we have writers, we have editors, and we have social media managers. We have all these kind of things, and everyone gets involved in this project that can do well for the community. And I think Claire from Lovely Land in Shrewsbury, I think we're going to speak to her about that, maybe starting that sometime. So maybe there's another one there for you, Richard. Start a podcast.
And I think the one word for me that's come out of the pandemic is community. And you know, I was just reading about the poorest area in Birmingham, and the fact that they hadn't even got because there's been less money pumped into it than had been hoped. They haven't even got a local shop or a pub or a place of worship, and therefore, if you haven't got those focal areas, you have that. It's very hard to have a community. So I think there's a role for online communities, a bit like you're doing with your podcasting. And a bit like I'm trying to do with the website I'm doing, so to help community across the world really develop.
Amazing. And how are you? First of all, the feedback. Have you had good feedback? Have people got involved with this already?
Yeah, the feedback has been positive. It's been interesting because I was thinking they'd probably say, "Oh, what a great idea," but they actually their first one is. They absolutely love the logo, so that's been really good because it's meant that it's sort of diverted in me to me saying, well, why don't you think about being a graphic designer? And there's a website that I use myself called Canva, so I'm just gonna
Canva, amazing.
Yeah, that's all free, and I've noticed that when people put stuff. Not only on social media but on their own website, you think it's been designed by a professional graphic designer, but it's actually been designed on Canva. Now, I do think that will be useful for people who are interested in graphic design. So that could be primary school children or secondary school children, college students. And say you went for an interview for a graphic design job, you can show how you've used images and text, different fonts to set something up beautifully in terms of colours and layout.
It's good to have a play around. I mean, most of the logos that I've made, I started off with something similar to Canva. It's called PixArt, PICSART. It's mostly free. It's very similar to Canva. That Shrewsbury Biscuit logo you see above you there, Rich, I made that by myself. I made that on PixArt, and I'm not a graphic designer. And it is very fun just to sit there and play with images and shapes and colours. And
exactly. And your logo tells the story of what you do, which is vital. So that's critical. In terms of feedback, at the bottom of the website, people can add their own ideas. So I'm just going to read a couple. Now, this is again interesting, and it might be interesting for your listeners here. This feeds into what's called a Google form. So you can't see it on the website, but as soon as they click on that, it'll take them to a form. And then they can put in their idea, and I'll just read you a couple out that I've got. So this person says, I'm going to read the whole lot out because it's quite nice. It's only two lines. Write a letter or send a random card. Receiving real letters is a lost pleasure, and it gives the postman and the postwoman a job as well. And when they're doing their job, they might smile or wave at someone, which is also nice. Everyone's a winner. So, So the way that happens now is somebody send that in, and then I'll do a post about that. So that's the way it works. In the future, I'm going to try and get. And some of your listeners might be interested. I want some people that are interested in blogging to be like people that are linked to this, so they'll have some rights, so they can create some posts as well. So if there's anybody listening that's always fancied being a blogger, then this might be quite nice for you to do. And I'll give you the training. It'll all be free. And imagine that on your CV, saying you've done some blog posts.
I know there are a couple of young writers actually that listen to this show that want to, there's a few that write to me and want to be part of the Biscuit, but we need to put the infrastructure in place before we start taking young ones in. Do you know what I mean? But they might really appreciate this. So if you're listening to this, get in touch with.
And also, because I work with students and in schools, I've got the security check, so they'd be able to email me, so it wouldn't just be somebody that's a random person, because you've got to be very careful with that sort of stuff as well. I'm going to read you another one. Sign a petition to stop the Norwegian experiments on minke whales at change.org. So somebody's feeling very passionate there about the fact that in some countries whales are actually killed, and there's a petition on a particular site. And now that's quite an interesting site. People might like to look at that, change.org. And you can sign up. It's all free, and basically you can sign petitions. And I've done a blog post about petitions on the site to tell you a little bit more about it. So petitions, online petitions are really important. And the blog post, if people want to have a look, it's called Petition People. And I'll just read you what it says. In our world, there are things that you agree with and things that you disagree with. If you feel sad or cross about something, you can sign an online petition. So the way I try and write them is in a sort of way to get people to think, really. Mm-hmm. And I try not to lecture too much. That's the other thing. I feel very, very strongly about animal rights, but I try not to say, you must do this or you mustn't do that, because
what moisturizer are you wearing? Do you know what they do with that?
So I do think carefully before I do the blog post, and if anybody wants to get involved with this, that would be part of the training, really. It's got to be a bit of a conversation to get them to think in the first part of it.
I feel very strongly about that, Richard. Of course, I'm the conversational king of Shropshire. So very, very important stuff. I've seen you on Instagram as well. I literally just followed you on with my USUK account, my US UK account. So guys, go to 30 Mins of Good on Instagram and give it a good follow. Follow what you guys are doing, because I'd like this idea to grow. I really would, because it does have huge international potential, because people can do this all around the world, and it starts off important conversations. Conversation is important because it gets people talking about the most important issues. I think this is amazing, Richard.
Oh, thank you. I'm going to leave you with a quote from Morgan Freeman, who I've done a blog post about it you might like to look at. But he said, how do we change the world? And the answer to that is one act of kindness at a time. So, people get so worried about the future and they feel powerless. So what Morgan's saying is that, don't focus on the fact you're powerless. Just focus on what power you've got. And we've all got some power, especially in the online world, where we can, email an MP for a start. In a democracy, we can add our names to petitions, and we can create websites or blogs or podcasts, as you're doing. So perhaps let's just focus on the fact we've all got some power, as opposed to feeling powerless in our modern society.
Beautiful. Well, guys, I really enjoyed speaking to you, Richard. Maybe in a while we can get you back on and find out how things have progressed. I really like that. I definitely really enjoyed our conversation about e-security. I think that's very, very important. Maybe we can have a discussion with a parent or something at some point. I just think these are just important things to keep talking about, I think.
Yeah, I mean, we could do one live from a school if you want. That would be quite interesting if we get the head teacher's permission. So that would be quite a nice, lively podcast for you. So I'm quite happy to do that in
Maybe,
September, and we can find a school. If there's any teachers there or head teachers that listen to this, perhaps you can email Alex, and that might be something that would be really interesting. You know, it would give the children and the parents chance to express their worries, and also some tips. You know, I sometimes think there's almost like too many experts out there. So, you know, there's an expert about everything, and sometimes we ignore the fact that there are some experts in terms of parents, because they're going through the process of bringing their children up.
Amazing. Rich, you've been amazing. Honestly, I've really enjoyed speaking to you. I'll need to tell you about something that I'm doing in September as well, Rich.
Yeah.
Words. At 9 a.m. on the 29th of September, I'm going to be going live in a podcast, and I'm not going to stop for 24 hours.
Wow.
9 a.m. on the 30th of September, which is International Podcast Day. We will stop, but for 24 hours, I'll be live. 12 hours of the Shrewsbury Biscuit and 12 hours of USUK, US UK, the podcast I do. We're going to be doing this to raise money for Lingen Davis, and we're still looking for sponsors. If there are any companies out there that would like to sponsor, and we've had a few get in touch. There's loads of spaces left, though. Get in touch with us, because we're selling sponsored hours for £100 donation for the charity. We'll get in touch. We can talk. You know, that's a minimum donation, but we can talk. Get involved, because on that hour, you'll get your hour sponsored by Alex Whiteley or whoever the company is, and we'll display your logos. We're very excited. The Shrewsbury Biscuit schedule is nearly full. We've had some amazing names getting in touch. We've got Charlie Adlard, we've got Marcus Bean, we've got the mayor. He's coming to speak to us for an hour. We've got so many people. Beth Heath is going to come as well. So we have a venue. The Reach Community Hub, thanks to Shrewsbury Town, the community, and we have our main sponsor in Reach. So we're very excited about this, and I hope you guys join us and get involved. You can get in touch with us via our website, which is the shrewsburybiscuitpodcast.co.uk. There is a bit there where you can get in contact with us, and that website is made for us by our friends at Web Orchard. Richard, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. I've thoroughly enjoyed it, and hopefully some of the tips will be useful to your listeners.
Absolutely, and I'd love to do a feature episode. I want to get in touch with the school and see if we can do a good feature on e-security. I think it's very important indeed.
Thanks, Alex.
Thank you very much, guys, and we'll catch you next time. Peace out.